She's a funny old broad. She keeps you guessing.
Good afternoon, everybody. This is Angela, middle initial K, last name Durden, of the Constrained View podcast. And we have a guest in here that you may already know. His name is Jedwin Smith. He is an award-winning journalist, many years, sports, war coverage, that sort of thing. Had a lot of adventures doing all of it. This book of his is called Jedwin Smith, a Marine and a journalist walk into a bar, because he was a Marine. Well, Marines are always Marines, so that's the way that goes. But what we're going to be talking about today most specifically is his book, I Am Israel, Lions and Lambs of the Land. Don't worry about seeing the cover too good because these two books will be linked in the show notes. And so as you're watching, if you scroll down, you'll be able to see the show notes and the links, and you can go to it. What we're going to talk about is because, Israel, somebody's always trying to get rid of it. And they always use the same argument that they're colonizers and they stole their land, blah, blah, blah. And that's not true. But this book is also pointing out that what's happening in Israel is actually something that's happening around the world. And it's not just a conflict over land, it's a conflict over ideology. Philip Haney, who you may know was a founder of the Department of Homeland Security and was murdered because of some stuff he knew and was going to talk about it. He wrote the foreword to this book, an excellent foreword. You'll want to know it. Here's what he said about what he felt this book was all about. He said, this book is about three overlapping walks of faith: Israel's as a nation and a people, the many others who are drawn to it for a variety of reasons, and his own, a walk he's been urged to take for years, but that until finally taken, he did not understand the reasons for. And that's a whole other conversation there. But in this book, and I really think you should get it because it's got a timeline in the back that will explain the modern day history of Israel, why it's been fought against, who's been fighting against it, and I think you'll enjoy that. So make sure that you get both of these books. One is fun, and the other is well, it's affecting you right now. So without further ado, I'm going to invite Jedwin to the stage. Hello, Jedwin Smith.
Hello, it's great to be here again. Right?
Yes, absolutely right. So I'm going to entitle this particular podcast as "I Was on Hezbollah's Hit List."
Yes.
Tell us how you came to be on Hezbollah's hit list. And
Oh,
Hezbollah is a Persian uh, group, correct?
correct.
Okay, go ahead, tell us.
Yeah, it's I just had a knack of going to places that I wasn't supposed to be in and writing about things that are very controversial. Uh, it's a bad habit if you don't like getting shot at. Uh, but uh, I'm not a big fan of Hezbollah. I've seen it up close. It's staggering, and it's what's
So
even
what?
more staggering is
Go ahead.
people just don't know history, and
True.
they just look at the moment right now and they say, "Wow, those poor children in Gaza are
Hmm.
getting slammed," but they don't know the reasons why,
Hmm.
and but anyway, it's
Well, some of that's going to be covered in your book, I Am Israel, because you went with a Christian group that they're native born Arabs, correct? That had
correct.
converted to Christianity,
Yes,
and how they were going into the Gaza area and trying to help. There's a lot of physical deformity, um, mental issues,
Yes.
such as retardations of various sorts. Uh, there's reasons for all of that, but there is a whole chapter on this group that goes in. They're young men, and they
Yes.
go into non-Christian homes and supply them with wheelchairs and other things that they cannot get
Right.
through their own people because they won't ever see any of the money that's been sent for aid.
That's right.
That's right.
It's
So let's get back to this Hezbollah thing. What year was it that you found out you were on their hit list, and who told you?
that was in 1984
Uh-huh.
when
That was
I
a year after the Beirut
right
barracks were bombed,
right
the
after
Marine barracks.
right after the Marines evacuated to Beirut, and it was turned over really to the PLO.
Okay.
And
So were you there uh, at the 83 bombing
no, I got there a week later.
a week
It's
later?
uh, the smell of death was still heavy in the air. Uh,
Yeah.
the fighting was going on.
Fighting between who?
It's well, you had the Christian Maronites, uh, and then you had the PLO, and the Yasser Arafat, and they continually were fighting each other. It's
Mm-hmm.
it was like it was worse than like an old west town. It's you wake up in the morning and there'd be bodies in the streets, and it got so bad in Beirut that they ran out of places to in cemeteries to bury the dead, and the
Yeah.
rats ran free in the daylight. Rats as big as cats, and uh,
Eating on the bodies.
oh yeah, and so what
Yeah.
you had is this incredible atmosphere of decomposition and diesel fuel and cordite, and it
None of those are
after a
pleasant
few days you got
smells.
used to it. Yeah,
Yeah. Yeah. So it was a week after the Beirut bombing, and that was in October of 83, correct?
yeah, yeah,
And so you were sent over there by what, the Atlanta Journal Constitution?
yeah. The Atlanta Journal Constitution.
You
I
worked
did the
for them at the
reporting
time.
for Cox Enterprises. Yes, all their
Right.
newspapers. Yeah.
Yeah. So they sent you over there, and what's the first thing you did when your feet touched the ground?
I prayed. That's we're you're it was a taxi ride from the airport to the Commodore Hotel. That's the only hotel that was still standing in
Well,
Beirut.
now there was something, if I remember correctly, wasn't there something about the taxi driver and his son or grandson, or have I got that confused with another story?
No, that's his. I met his cousins,
Uh huh.
who's the one was the oldest son was a pilot for the uh, Lebanese Air Force,
Uh huh.
which at that time no longer existed. And I met the mother and the father, and uh, they're very proud to show me all their weapons. It's that's when you met a family in Beirut. They wanted to show you the weapons they had.
So this was the taxi driver is telling you stuff, and you decided you wanted to talk to them more, or how?
Yeah, I he drove us into be East Beirut, the
Uh huh.
Maronite section, across the Green Line, into you weren't supposed to cross the green line. I'm trying to remember all this. That was it's like the DMZ. You know,
Right.
if you go across the east, why would somebody who's stationed in West Beirut, uh, why would they be going into East Beirut where the Christians are? So that must mean you're a spy. And
So
I was
I'm trying to.
arrested as a spy. So
Well, I guess so. You landed what airport did you land at?
uh, at the airport in Beirut, Beirut
Okay.
International,
Beirut
and
International. And was it on the west side or the east side?
it's on the west side.
And the
And
Commodore Hotel was on the west side also?
correct, in
And
downtown Beirut. Yeah.
so you got to the hotel, but this taxi driver that took he lived in the east, is on the east side, east of the
Uh,
highway.
he never told me where he lived.
Oh,
I mean,
but
people
he,
are they're very secretive for obvious reasons. But that's how he made his living is taking journalists. And
oh, I see.
uh, there were no tourists, you know.
Right, right.
But that's how he made his living. And
And he's the one that wanted to show you his family's
yeah,
stockpile of
after he
weapons.
realized we talked politics for a while, and once he determined I was a good guy, I guess, uh, he he started talking, and there was an incident. Uh, One day he didn't show up, and it was the morning after there was a bombing just up the street to where uh, the Commodore was at, and I was there, and uh, it was it was very tense. Uh, a Muslim had gone into a bar frequented by Marine embassy guards and
Mhm.
did a suicide bombing and
Oh,
killed a number of people. And we were carrying
oh,
bodies out of the bar and putting them in the trunks of car, and they were racing off to American hospital. And the next day, um, I'm talking to Emil, and he just was very quiet, just very quiet. And so he just taken us out to Fortress America where the Marines were. And finally, he had told us, I said, well, how's your sister doing? And his sister um, was a doctor.
uh-huh.
And she, he was so proud of her. She didn't care what your religion was. If you were injured, she was going to help her. And she was
Sure.
uh, driving to work uh, the day before, and the bombing. There was two bombings that coincided with each other. The one at the bar to try to get some American Marines,
Uh-huh.
and then at the French Foreign Legion headquarters, which was right next to the hospital. And she was driving past, and the blast killed her.
Oh,
And he's crying, and he's telling me his sister is dead. And but it took all night to identify her, and
I
he
bet.
had no sleep, but he's you know but anyway, he was obviously shaken up.
Yeah. Yeah.
And that you see enough of this in Beirut. It doesn't care who you are, a kid, whatever, uh, a soldier or whatever. It was just hell on earth. And anybody who's been to a war zone can tell you there's nothing glamorous about it.
No.
It's death and destruction and insanity. It's hard to keep your wits about you. You don't dare. Like one of the first things he did to me when I met him was, I had a cross on my neck,
Uh-huh.
and he says, "You need to take that off."
Yeah.
So I took that off uh, and left it in my hotel room
Yeah.
underneath the mattress. And but anyway, it was it's like last night I didn't sleep again because I'm sitting there. I knew this was coming up, and all of a sudden, all Beirut comes back into
Right.
focus, and
Well,
uh,
I was doing some research on it, and I went on YouTube. Let me tell you something. YouTube might be a comic company as they're being accused of sometimes, or Marxist or whatever, and wanting to destroy freedom of speech. But to me, they are the largest repository of truth of mankind's history in the last I don't know, many years, because all these videos that have been taken through the years by news organizations do all this sort of thing. Um, you can find them on here. I typed in the YouTube search bar at the top, 1983 Beirut bombing. I never got to the end of the list
Right.
of all the many different recounts of that.
Right.
You know, it just went on, and I said, well, I'm not going to show any of these because I do know that you do have that PTSD every now and then it kicks in.
Yep.
And I said, I'm not going to show them. I'm going to link a couple of them in the show notes so people can find it easy.
Right.
But so you go to Beirut,
Right.
and it was Hezbollah that did this bombing, correct?
Yes, it was Hezbollah.
Yes.
Yes.
So how is it Jedwin starts writing stories and he's doing
Right.
his reporting thing and he's sending his stories in to Atlanta, correct?
Right.
Atlanta. And from there it was disseminated to all their papers, and did it get on the wires and all that stuff
Oh
too?
yeah, it was ran in every major newspaper
Right.
and Cox
So what
organization.
is it
Yeah.
you were writing that put you on Hezbollah's hit list that, you know, others weren't?
Well, what I did is this would be the first time the Marines have been in a combat zone since Vietnam, and so I wanted to concentrate on the Marines. And
Mm-hmm.
as a matter of fact, the story I ended up doing was like 2 full pages. Is a large story. Uh, Georgia Marines in a combat zone, and it was nominated for Pulitzer. I was proud of that, but it was talking to these young 18, 19-year-old kids that once upon a time that was me. You know, do they understand what's going on? But the rules of engagement were asinine. Uh, uh, anyway,
Well, you're
uh,
talking to somebody who's never been in a war before.
no, no,
So when you say rules of engagement were asinine, what does that mean?
they were allowed to carry ammunition, but they couldn't put the clip into the rifle. And
Wait,
so, right,
wait. Who said they couldn't put the clip in the rifle? I mean, what good is
it's
it then?
uh, none. It's
So whose
Marines.
rule was this?
This was United States policy. They were
You
trying
sure
to.
it wasn't the president at the time who didn't? Who was the president at the time? It was
Uh,
Reagan. No, he
as
wouldn't have
Ronald
told you
Reagan,
not to do that. No,
right? Ronald Reagan, yeah,
somebody didn't want the U.S. to be able to defend themselves there,
right.
right?
But it was politics, and
That's what I'm saying.
yeah,
Politics.
politics, and politics cost a lot of deaths in Beirut.
Yeah.
It's like the Marines who, like the BLT was a 4-story structure, concrete and rebar, and
Oh, when you say BLT,
uh, it was a battalion landing team that
oh, okay.
was. Uh, they guarded the entrance. There was a road that just went straight into the BLT. There was no barriers, concrete barriers, because that would show that the Marines were there to really pick a side.
Uh-huh.
But the Marines, Reagan wanted the Marines just to be there, just to kind of give stability to the area and keep the airport open. The airport was a $3 million a day. That's how Beirut existed. They needed that airport. So the Marine compound was right next to the airport, and the BLT, the Marines guarding it. They had sentries, guards posted on that road, but they did not have their weapons charged. There was no. They could not. By the time the driver sped past them with, I think it was like 2,000 pounds of TNT and petrol and bolts and everything else, turned out to be the largest explosion since the atom bomb at Hiroshima. Um, and but they couldn't stop the driver. The driver was smiling as he went by, and they didn't have, by the time they got a clip in there, uh, boom, the building went down, and over 200 Marines rode what end up calling the concrete and rebar elevator down the ground level. Killed them, over 200 of them.
Oh man!
But that's the politic end of it. Like when I was talking to the kids, I say kids, 18, 19-year-old
right
PFCs and Lance Corporals. One of them asked me, he said, "What would you do?" Well, I'm the wrong guy to ask on that.
Yeah.
Because he was guarding. There was kind of like a little DMZ outside the camp, and and people were crossing it at night, but you couldn't challenge them. He said, "What would you do?" And I said, "Well, they're not supposed to be there." I says, "I'd lock and load and I'd empty the magazine, And I said, "But hey, don't." I says, "I'm a little, hard on that." So but the kid, it was an honest question. He wanted to know, and me, I'm 3 in the chest, no questions asked. That's always been my. But anyway, it was heartbreaking to see these kids. They were there, but they couldn't really fight. They're.
Let me ask you a question. So, knowing Reagan as I do, it doesn't seem to me that he would even have known that they weren't allowed to stay armed. Would I be wrong in saying that he didn't know? Were things being held back from him?
I would imagine they were. It's you have the military, which really is calling the shots, and
right.
But they set rules of engagement to I don't know for political reasons, obviously.
Well, I know, but somebody set the rules of engagement, and as we're learning recently, what with this Biden debacle presidency, that he wasn't even signing the vast majority of the orders that he gave. They had an auto pen that signed it.
Right.
And so he obviously didn't know anything. Somebody was pulling the strings. Somebody's making the decisions. In Trump's first term, same thing was happening because Trump didn't understand just how deep this anti-American and anti-peace sentiment was, and they were lying to his face, and he just assumed they weren't. That he was the president. That they would tell. I would imagine that Reagan was probably in the same situation, that he didn't know, and I even wonder if he was ever told that they didn't have weapons armed and ready to go.
Right.
The only reason I'm saying that is because that just tells us that the people that were pulling the strings did not have the best interest of anybody at heart except for their own, which, correct me if I'm wrong, but I bet it was to make money.
Yeah, I mean, part of the reason, well, like I say, the Reagan sent the Marines there to keep the airport open. There was also the Hezbollah Valley.
Right.
That was one of the biggest opium growing areas in the world. It's everybody had their hand in it. British, French, Italians, Americans, Lebanese, Arafat. I mean, it's so easy to say, it's so easy to pick a villain in a situation like this. It depends where your heart is, your political motives and stuff like that.
Yeah.
I tried to be fair. I spent time talking to a lot of people, not just Marines, and I I was I remember I love history. I just love history,
Uh-huh.
and I wanted to see Martyrs Square. Martyrs Square was in East Beirut, and that goes back to the days of World War One when I think it was the Armenians were just decimated. Uh, anyway, they have these figurines in East Beirut that uh, my photographer Calvin Cruz is just a brilliant photographer. He wanted pictures of them, so I'm sitting there and nervous. we're you know we're in so-called enemy territory. The good guys, the Christians. But anyway, I looked up at the shattered building. Everything in Beirut was destroyed, bombed. And I
Mm-hmm.
looked up the remnants in another building, and I saw a figure. I thought, oh God! As it turned out, uh, we stumbled accidentally upon Maronite headquarters.
Oh.
So next thing I know is armed guards came on down, and they wanted to know what we were doing there, and our taxi driver, he's explaining, in French and then, in English, hey, these guys are just reporters. They wanted to see the Martyr Square, and one of the guys just laid a gun up on my head and said, "Don't come back," and that
You
gets your
didn't come
attention.
back.
Yeah, I didn't come back. I I had to check myself, make sure I hadn't wet my pants, and soiled myself. But
Yeah.
that was Beirut, and uh,
So how, but you had to have done something that ticked off Hezbollah, that they would put you on this freaking hit list. I mean,
right.
did they ever say?
No, but I know that in Beirut, everything was bombed out.
Uh-huh.
And this is back in the days, journalists don't understand, but we didn't have computers, you know, we
You
had
didn't have GPS. You didn't have a cell phone.
nothing.
You didn't have a phone.
Right,
No sat phones.
right. So you had to use telex. Well, everyone in Beirut, these are all like uh, they're all MacGyvers. So they would take a telephone line and run it into their house, and they, jerry rig it, and so they could have a telephone and all that. Well, the telexes we use, uh, Arafat, the Muslims, Hezbollah, they all had access to it. They knew everything that was being written and sent back to
Whoa.
the States.
Whoa.
And,
They were tapped into the line then.
yeah, mine weren't complimentary by any means to the killing. And,
Right.
um, so you became an enemy. And I think there's only like 5 of us in Beirut at the time, because the city was falling apart.
Yeah.
It was not a, it's not, it wasn't the most ideal place to be, but you know, I, I, I enjoyed it. I mean, I don't know, something. I
Well,
don't know.
you're weird like that anyway, but
Yeah,
you like to be in the action.
yeah,
I know you do, and uh, and it takes all kinds to be able
yeah,
to be able to get out there and do the reporting, especially the hard reporting. Nowadays these a lot of reporters just check their Twitter feed and
yeah.
click a freaking link,
I,
and yet they don't know if they're getting the truth or not. You had literally boots on the ground there, your
yeah,
own,
right.
and were were seeing it firsthand.
Yeah.
So uh,
It
I'm
was
sure it was absolutely a great reporting.
it was a venture of a lifetime, really. And
Yeah. How long
it's
were you there?
why?
How long?
Oh, I was there into January of '84. At the right before the city fell, I think in February, and uh, Calvin and I were on the last plane out of Beirut, and we got
Wow.
hit with 50 cal fire on the runway, and rock. I know the plane is going down the runway to getting ready to take off, and all of a sudden the brakes hit, and the doors pop open, and so I walk back. It was a 707 Mideast Airlines, and I walked back to take a look out of the hatchway in the back. Had a cigarette, like smoking a cigarette, and I see whew, a rocket go right over the top. I'm, whoa! And so I came back with I put the cigarette out. I came back with Calvin, and I said, "That was a rocket." He just looked at me, and it's like Calvin was a Vietnam vet, and he, we just sat there in silence until the plane took off.
Right.
But it was interesting. It was a venture of a lifetime, and
Sure. Yeah.
it gave you the sense that what you see on TV or what you read in a newspaper during a conflict, uh, you almost have to read between the lines to know exactly what's happening, and you know uh, you can't. It's hard to describe to somebody what it is to uh, walk through flames to carry a body out that's all mangled and throw into the back of a trunk of a car so it can get to the hospital. It's you got the smell of death. You got you got you got mothers and family. They're screaming. They're just wailing. You got all this noise, and then you always your head's on a swivel. You're wondering if somebody's going to step out of the shadows with a rifle or an AK. So, but really, I wouldn't have. I'd go back again. Uh, you know, I'd try to find a way to carry a weapon, but uh, it's funny is that a little over a year later, I was in Africa, in the Horn of Africa, and with the PLO was there, and these guys were medics in a sense that they could make craft artificial legs. And I'm sitting there talking to them, and they were friendly, and they said,
Yeah.
I said, hey, you guys were trying to kill me in Beirut. And one of the guys just looked at me and smiled in perfect English. He says, Mr. John, nothing personal, nothing personal. I go, okay, thank you. Thank you very much. All right. But so to understand these conflicts, by no means am I an expert and, or a know-it-all or anything like that. It's just
No.
that you just carry it with you for a long time.
Yeah, you do. I mean, I remember you telling some more of this story, and including the Eritrean one, which we're not going to get into today.
Right.
And the darker aspects of those two stories, and
Right.
we're not going to talk about those today. Um,
Yeah,
you
that's good with
know,
me. Thank you.
I know it is. See, you see how
Thank
nice
you.
I am.
Thank you.
I'm nice to you.
All right. Hey,
um, at the same time, we come forward, let's see, 83, 93, 2000, 2000, over 40 years,
right.
and bombings are still happening, and
Right.
it's always the terrorist coming after the Jews.
Right.
Always.
Right.
Nothing's changed.
Right.
And uh and it's this because I know when you went into Gaza with those young Christian men, there was four of them, if I remember correctly,
Yeah.
or three. 4, right?
4. It was in the
4.
West Bank, going into the West
West
Bank.
Bank, yeah.
Yeah, West Bank.
When you went in with them and you saw the people that just lived there, they they were happy to get some help
Oh God, yes. They would come
because
all the
they were let down by their own leaders.
right. The Palestinians are the most abused people on the face of the earth.
And that's
Uh,
saying something, given
it is.
Somalia and some of these other places, you know.
But they're everyone. Like the other 22 Arab countries uh, back them, financially and in the media, but they will not allow the Palestinians into their country. You cannot you get there are you cannot obtain a citizenship like say in Beirut there's about or in Lebanon there's about 500,000 or 300,000 Palestinians there, and they live in refugee camps, and they are not citizens. UNRWA, uh, United Nations, they'll feed them, and uh, in Jordan, there's close to 3 million, and they're not allowed citizenship, and there's reasons for that. It's
Yeah.
uh, after the 6 Day War. Palestinians fled into the West Bank and then into uh, Jordan. And once they're there, they tried to have a little revolution and take over the government. So uh, if you're a Palestinian and you're in Jordan, you're living in a police state, and the soldiers are everywhere. And uh, like Egypt, Egypt they have the far southwest corner of Gaza. It butts up to Egypt,
Hmm.
and they have a wall there, and they have a
Hmm.
guard tower, and they do not allow refugees to enter Egypt. Um, they're they are the lowest form of Muslim Arabs, in the
Yeah.
Middle East, and it's
Yeah.
they know that. Uh, no,
You
no,
know, yeah, I know they know that. Here's what I I I don't understand is, and I mean, I may never understand it, but why is it that that not only are they treated so badly, but they voted for a terrorist organization to be their leader and hurt them worse?
it's it's uh, it's the simple reason of why it's the rule of the mafia rule. Like in a sense, it's that you're not going to get any food uh, unless you back like Hamas in Gaza. Hamas controls everything in Gaza, even though Gaza is almost completely flattened. Right now, Hamas is telling the world that all the Palestinians in Gaza they're starving. You know, well, there's been since during this ceasefire, there's been uh, 25,000 trucks loaded with food that have come into Gaza. That's enough food for 4 months for 2 million people. But you're not going to get any food unless you're praising Hamas, and you're going to obey Hamas, and your children are going to go to the schools that do nothing but teach hatred for the Israelis. It's
You know, when uh they brought out the bodies of the two babies that were killed,
yeah,
they said died,
right,
and they brought out the mother's body, which ended up not being the mother's body.
right,
They just grabbed a female body and hauled it out. Um, a lot of people that I saw in the media, all sides of the media, were talking about how the people were cheering on these babies' bodies being brought out.
Right.
I saw that footage myself,
Right.
and I can tell you that the vast majority of people standing around there were watching solemnly. They were not cheering. They
Right.
were watching the babies. Suddenly it was dawning on a bunch of them that these were babies.
Right.
Babies.
Yeah.
They've lost babies. So this
The
was
autopsies confirmed that they were strangled
uh,
to death.
yes,
All right.
yes, probably in
So,
front of their mother
right.
and other people that they could see,
Yeah.
and abused. They were
Yeah.
abused in various ways too.
Right.
So, but the thing is that not everybody that's in Gaza is that they were willing to stand quietly
Right.
because of just the horror of it. Shows that there's people there that they couldn't even bring themselves to do any rah rah sis boom bah for any of that.
Right.
See what I mean?
Right.
So it's a booger of a situation. And
Yeah.
Trump saying, we're gonna rebuild Gaza and we're gonna turn it into the jewel of the Mediterranean.
Right.
I mean, oh my God, if that wasn't stirring a nice little cute pot, that is so funny. Suddenly, all the Arab nations like we can do that.
Yeah. Right. Right.
We got
Right.
the money.
Right. That's
Oh, I'll
it's
tell you what.
uh it's but the Israelis, they want Hamas totally eliminated, and you can understand why.
Oh yeah,
Just the
yeah,
history of the wars.
yeah,
Uh, every time the the Palestinians or the Egyptians, the Syrians or the Jordanese, when they attack Israel, you know, Israel, it takes a while, but Israel comes back, and Israel
yeah,
gets to the point where they're getting ready to decimate them. And the United States and the UN, everyone comes in and goes, okay, it's time to have a peace, a ceasefire.
yeah,
And so
yeah,
the enemy is able to still exist.
yeah.
And that's why Netanyahu says, I want Hamas completely eliminated. I want
Right.
Hezbollah completely eliminated. And uh, the
Yeah, yeah.
right thinking military generals in the United States know that if Iran gets the nuclear bomb, man, that's
And Iran's top guy there, he just turned down Trump's offer, of
right,
how to let's just all get along. And the guy's like, yeah, like, not gonna do it. So,
right, right.
um,
It's that's why I
so
say there is no such thing as an expert in the Middle East, because you can't you can't categorize emotions. And the kids are, they're brainwashed. The Israeli, the Jews are the evil. They're that
but and
there's only
yet
one God, Allah.
and yet and yet here's what's going on. You've got all these different nations around that want Israel destroyed.
Right.
They have tried to destroy it since 47,
47.
48,
Yeah.
47. And it has not been successful in doing so. Yes, they've
Right.
had a few little times when they were okay. Yet they always get to a certain point. They're all working together. They're all trying to do a part of the stuff.
Right.
Woo, we'll get them in, boom. And then they get to a certain point and it stops and they back away. And the reason is because they're like all criminals, all evil people. They're willing to work together to a point, but then there's a point where they all want to be top dog. And now they're looking around at everybody else who wants to be top dog, and they're like, oh, I want to be top dog. If we keep on with this, then, I'm gonna have to start fighting all of them, and they're gonna be on me.
Right.
It's the same way with the Democrat Party and the rhinos and the social justice warriors here in the United States. The only thing they agree on is that they want money
Right.
and they want to destroy families
Right.
and the foundation. But they can't ever quite make it happen, because once they do that, there isn't even, if they destroy all of that, they would have nothing upon which to build their own society.
That's right.
They have nothing,
Right.
and they would be fighting with each other.
That's why we say this is a war that's gone on for 1400 years. It's
Yeah.
it's the old biblical of, you attack a city, you kill everything that's in the city,
Yeah.
every human, every animal, destroy every structure, and then you salt the earth.
Yeah.
You eliminate them. It's that's a mindset in the Middle East. It's like,
and yet they can't seem to do it. See,
right.
That's what I'm saying. And the reason is because they don't trust each other.
They don't.
The only thing they have in
do not
common is
trust
hatred
each
of
other.
Jews. That's
Right.
the only thing they have in common.
Right.
So
Yeah,
it's just really quite interesting,
right. Well, you always have, whenever there's a war, you always have the what it's called the three no's. You got I have to write it down. Three no's. Yeah, you got let's see here. Well, anyway, there's no negotiations, no mercy, no friendship with the Jews. It's just absolutely, they want, every time a peace agreement has come up, Israel has offered, like in 2008 with Bill Clinton, they offered to say, hey, listen, you can have 93% of the West Bank. That can be Palestine, if that's what you want to call it. And twice, Clinton tried to get them to sign a peace agreement, and the Israelis said, fine, hey, we just don't want to be at war all the time. And the Arabs have walked away. Arafat walked away from it and started the second Intifada, which, I don't know, if you're in Israel, all right, I've been to Israel 3 times. It's in 2006, 2008, and in 2017, is that when you get on a bus, and it's the only way really to travel in Israel, and you see Arabs getting on with backpacks. And that tension on the bus is just
palpable.
Wow. I mean, it's incredible. Yeah. I met in 2017, I was doing an interview, in Jerusalem, and I had to get on a bus to get back to Abu Ghosh, which is south of the city. And the bus stopped at a school, and all these teenage girls, junior high, or not junior, junior high, high school, and all that. The bus was loaded with young girls, and we'd start taking off, and all of a sudden, in the front seat was 2 Arabs, an older man and a younger one, and the younger one started screaming at the bus driver, and screaming, and then he gets over there, and the bus driver had to pull off to the side of the road, and the Arab puts him in a headlock, and he's putting down. Well, I look around, all these girls are, their eyes are just like this, and hey, I'm an old man, but I don't know. I was against the window, and I excused myself around this girl, and I stood in the aisle, and I started walking towards the Arab. I don't know what I was going to do, and I'm sure he's a hefty dude, and I knew he was going to kick the crap out of me, but I couldn't sit there and watch this. And then all of a sudden there's a tap on my shoulder, and I turn around, and there's this dude behind me with an Uzi, He was the guard on the bus, and he just nodded at me, pointed towards my seat, which I quickly took. And the Arab immediately let go of the bus driver, and peace was restored. But you just never know when something like that's going to happen. It's
Yeah.
like 3 days before my arrival there, a young uh, at the old city, Jerusalem, uh, at the Damascus Gate. She is 23 years old. She was a border patrol. Just beautiful young girl, And 3 Arabs came up to her with butcher knives and killed her, stabbing her in the neck. And
This is, I know you might not be able to see it, but she's on the front cover. This is
yeah,
the girl. We put her on the front cover.
Hadas Malka was her name.
Yeah.
And she was, she's on her cell phone, and she just Facebooked a friend saying, it's another beautiful day in Jerusalem, and I'm at the Damascus Gate, and, and then she got killed. But yeah, it's just,
Yeah.
that goes on back and forth. And, but even then, I have to tell you, Israel, to me, well, Jerusalem especially, to me was safer than any major city that I've been in at night. Chicago or Atlanta. I felt, because there's always a soldier around there with a Galil or an Uzi, and so you feel protected.
With the clip end.
Yeah, with the clip in, and they do not hesitate. And but it's a beautiful country. I'd go back to Israel in a second. I'd live there in a second. I joined the IDF, but such a beautiful, such a beautiful country, and such a historic country. It's
yeah.
I love Israel.
So
I am biased,
yeah, but liking a country, and there's nothing wrong with liking a country, because honestly, even if you talk about some of the countries with the wildest, um, Afghanistan, for instance, I mean, that is a rough country, and yet it has a beauty of its own, and so it's all God's earth.
Right.
Yes, for sure. It's just unfortunate that people want to take your part,
right,
whoever you are, and then there's others that want to do it.
Right.
So when we see all these stories on the mainstream media, I've heard people, I was calling it legacy media for a while and mainstream media, and I heard somebody use the term the propaganda media.
Right.
And I went, that's actually a pretty good name, is the propaganda media.
Right.
When you hear them still spewing out the propaganda, and they absolutely have no idea of what's going on there, why it's going on there, what the realities are on the ground, because they've never put a foot on it,
right,
and gone into the wilderness, if you want to say that, of the terrorist country. How is it they can even represent themselves? They're just reading words on a teleprompter.
Yeah,
they don't know.
A lot of
they want us to take their word for it.
Right. They're looking at an area from a distance, and if it's a big major television network, say, what they do is they've hired uh, Arabs and young kids to go in there and find the story, and with their camera, and then they come back with what they think is a great story, and you've got a man sitting there, the talking head, saying, these children in Gaza, are being decimated. They're living underground, and it's so horrible. And, it is horrible. My God, but it's really weird is here's an all out war, yet, like say example, World War II, we didn't care about the civilians in Dresden or Tokyo or that. When our planes came over and firebombed the areas and all that. Civilian deaths. Hey, that's part of the package when you have a whole out war like this.
That's the way it's always been with war
Yeah,
throughout the ages. I mean,
right. But
throughout the ages.
all of a sudden, it's hug. I call it huggy feely. It's well, you go in there. I want you to go into this house and kill the bad guys, but uh, make sure you don't kill any children or the mothers or what. It's got a lot of soldiers, American soldiers killed.
Yeah.
And, under rules
and the
of engagement.
And the
like
problem's still not solved.
Oh yeah, it's still not
Yeah.
solved.
Yeah.
It's well, I won't get there. Sometimes I get carried away. So I'll just cool it.
So, well, this has been good. I know that the reason I wanted to interview is because I have heard some of this before,
right?
But it's different sitting down and actually interviewing somebody about it to confirm that certain things are, what does that mean?
Right.
Like did you say the BLM? Not the BLM, the
BLT.
Yeah, BLT.
The battalion landing team headquarters.
Yeah. See, I was thinking tomato sandwich, and I'm sitting there going, bacon, lettuce, tomato, and I was sitting there going, what? That's why I said, what does BLT stand for? Because I didn't have a frame of reference.
Right.
You see, and a lot of people don't.
Right.
And that's the problem. There's good people everywhere.
Right.
Bar none.
Right. And
the political factions up here and the political factions down here who are trying to destroy everything.
Right.
They're the problems. These people in the middle, they're not.
I always question the sanity of somebody who wants to glorify a war. It's like, hey,
I know.
Unless you've seen one, man, there's nothing there's nothing glorifying about it. It's it's a lot of sadness, a lot of tears, a lot of heartbreak.
I know.
And just it's insane.
I know.
That's
and try as hard as they want or as they might. People who try to rebuild cinematically a scene. I think the worst one I've ever seen was Cold Mountain?
Oh yeah.
The name of the movie is based on a book. It took all I had to keep my eyes on the screen to watch this extremely. I mean, the gore was there. I've never seen anything like it. But I wanted to see it because it was as close to anything I could imagine as being a real battle. And they did their research. They read what people wrote about what they had to walk through and what they were thrown onto. And I appreciated that. I've never thought war was romantic.
Right.
And nowadays with slow-mo and filters and special effects, no, that's not it at all.
Let me rewind to watch that killing again. This time in slow-mo. Yeah.
In slow-mo. Yeah. So anyway, last question I'm going to ask you.
Okay.
Have you heard whether or not Hezbollah has taken you off their hit list?
No, they have a long memory. They have a long memory. It's that's okay. I'm not going near Iran or Gaza.
Yeah.
I spent a lot of time in the West Bank, but that's different. There's but no, Gaza is. I think I'll I'll
Think
take
you'll
that off
pass?
my list of places to observe. You know,
Yeah,
that's
yeah. Well, Jedwin, it's been great, and if you'll just stay right there for a moment, I'll be right back with you, okay?
all right.
Hang
Thanks for
on.
having me. All right.
You're welcome.
Thanks for opening all the wounds. Okay.
Anytime.
Okay. All right.
Well, everybody, I'm going to say goodbye to you right now. We've had a great conversation with Jedwin Smith, and be sure to share it with people who you think might benefit from somebody who's been there and talked about some things. So I'm going to say goodbye, and we'll see you another time.
She treats you right.